In this video, we're going to talk about propaganda in the media. So what is propaganda? Well, in short, it's basically whenever the media is releasing information, facts, persuasive arguments to the public, and in some cases they're rumors or even all-out lies to influence public opinion or, in some cases, unfortunately, to manipulate the public. Okay, propaganda typically shows itself in three time periods: during wartime, during election cycles, and during advertisement campaigns. So these are the three biggest areas for media propaganda. So let's go ahead and let's cover some of this. Okay, wartime propaganda, that's kind of always been there. That being said, wartime propaganda has successfully used many tactics to sway public opinion. Wartime, and at least on a mass scale, really started during World War I, and America really kind of was at the spearheaded that kind of usage of what wartime propaganda could be with some of the new medias that we had available to us.
To stiffen the will to win, mass propaganda was used for the first time.
This propaganda they told us about them killing women and children and one thing and another. They had a lot of propaganda about that there. The Hun, you know, they called him. And how he'd go through these villages when he'd capture them and kill all the people off and that there. That's the stuff that they told us. To feed you up to get you mad, I guess.
Atrocities alleged to have been committed by the Germans in Belgium were presented in melodramatic form.
Wir waren wütend über diese Diffamierung.
We were furious about this
Wir haben
slander.
sie immer als bösartige.
We always said that it was evil propaganda, and we felt that we Germans were powerless to answer
in
back.
entsprechender Form antworten konnten.
Yeah, so if one of the major tactics during wartime propaganda definitely is to demonize the enemy. In other words, show the enemy as being evil. As you saw in that video, we get a couple of actors to kind of show what it would be like to have these Germans, push around, beat around on some lady and take a baby and throw it on the ground and moo-ha-ha, let's be evil, as it were. So if I were an audience watching that during the pre-World War I and I saw that evilness, as it were, depicted, and not just on that film, but on other films and other literature that's being handed out, I'll begin to get a picture that these German guys are really, really bad news. And so, yeah, I'm going to feel like it's my moral duty to do something about it. And that takes us to another tactic, and that is an attempt to belittle the enemy. During World War II, this is where, wartime propaganda was definitely at its height in terms of its usage. Really, the Axis and the Allied powers all saw what the potential was there for mass media, especially with what America had done during World War I. And we saw, on an unparalleled scale, mass media all over the place in terms of propaganda. And, in America, we made good use of places, outlets like Disney. Disney was one that showed through Donald Duck, skits through Donald Duck, kind of him portraying Hitler and how silly Hitler is and how weak Hitler is and how laughable Hitler is. And in many cases, we saw other, print publications and things of that nature that showed the German army, or Hitler specifically, because he was so kind of iconic, as being kind of weak and silly. And as a result, if we demonize the enemy, if we make them look evil and they are weak, then we feel like not only should we do something about it, but we certainly can, and it'll be an easy go of it, as it were. And I think another tactic definitely would be, and this is an easy one for you, and that is develop that sense of nationalism, that patriotic that sense of patriotism, that around wartime, this is what it is to be an American, to be proud to be an American. These are our morals and our, whatever. We are the good guys, as it were. And not only that, but then also to use that in some cases to do a call of action, whether it be to enlist today or to, during World War II, they asked people to buy war bonds or, something of that nature. And so using propaganda to really drive home that sense of nationalism. So if the public really believes that it's our patriotic duty to stamp out evil and it's going to be an easy go because that evil is kind of weak, then we're certainly much more likely to support that war effort. We're going to be compelled to believe that we need to behave in a certain way consistent with what the media is saying. Okay? All right, let's move on to our next area of propaganda, and that's election. And you certainly have seen election cycles play out, whether it be gubernatorial races, Senate races, or even presidential races on multiple times. And really that, the propaganda for elections have been there since really democracy, since the beginning of any democracy, really. And ads, mass media appearances, debates on TV, starting back in the 50s and whatnot. They all seek to either show the candidate in the positive light or their opponent in a negative light. There's not a lot of middle ground there, as it were. I can say that both now and on into the future, data analytic companies are taking a careful look at your usage of social media, of polls that are taken online to help craft some of those media messages, some of that propaganda that is sent out to support the candidate of choice or to, go after their opponent. Okay. And I guess the question is have negative campaigns always been there? I highly suggest that you watch this video in the top right-hand corner. It's very, very funny, but it displays some of the nasty things that were said from President Adams, to his rival Jefferson in 1780, and just all-out terrible things they said back and forth. So really, that negative ad campaign has always been there. That being said, there have been times, and I think in on the other side of the screen, when you see Reagan's election campaign, we're going to watch just a short bit of it, but he successfully runs a ad campaign that runs all positive.
I was drinking a little bit more in those days, and there was
Again, I'm going to skip forward just a little bit. So let's get to the ad itself.
Today, more men and women will go to work than ever before in our country's history. With interest rates at about half the record highs of 1980, nearly 2,000 families today will buy new homes, more than at any time in the past 4 years.
It's very often his own voice that's creating this feeling, and there's a cadence to it that's extremely soothing. But I think that after a while, you don't really pay attention to exactly what it's saying so much as a feeling that it creates, a feeling of warmth and comfort that was perfect for a guy like Reagan.
It's morning again in America. And under the leadership of President Reagan, our country is prouder and stronger and better. Why would we ever want to return to where we were less than 4 short years ago?
I'll never forget the first time I walked in and showed the president the Morning in America spots, and he teared up. He basically said, I wish I was that good. Reagan understood the power of emotion and the power of advertisement. I mean, to him, a campaign was advertising. So we had probably 150 reporters, the most cynical reporters in the world of the National Press Corps. We showed them the ads, dead silence. I mean, they obviously were all moved by the ads. A number of them shook their heads and said, boy, those are great. And then in their cynicism, they sort of said, boy, I mean, you guys are really manipulating us. And I said, well, fortunately, people in the country feel differently than you all.
Okay, so yeah, Reagan ran this really positive ad campaign, and it worked for him. Now, that being said, there have been political campaigns and political ads that have not gone over well with audiences at all. One of the biggest, perhaps, is called the Daisy Girl ad, and it comes in the mid-'60s. This comes from LBJ's candidacy, so let's take a look.
Two, three, 4, 5, 7, 6, 8, 9, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. These are the stakes to make a world in which all of God's children can live, or to go into the dark. We must either love each other or we must die.
Vote for President Johnson on November 3rd.
Yeah, so either vote for me or die. That's a pretty serious yeah, that's pretty hardcore right there. So definitely audiences and his political rivals didn't much care for that. It really was leveled heavily at his political rival, in which basically he's asserting that Goldwater is a warmonger that's going to get us in a nuclear holocaust of some sort. So really, if you don't vote for me, if you vote for the other guy, then you all are going to die as a result of a nuclear holocaust. And that's probably not the best ad to go. Texas has had its own political ad that really soundly was considered or condemned, as it were.
Take a look at this new attack ad from Texas candidate for governor Wendy Davis.
A tree fell on Greg Abbott. He sued and got millions. Since then, he spent his career working against other victims.
Davis's team has come out defending the ad, telling the Huffington Post it was supposed to show how her Republican opponent, Abbott, was rightfully compensated for his ordeal, yet denied that same right to other victims. But it's hitting Abbott on a touchy subject, as many media outlets point out.
Trying to claim this is a legitimate point. We're getting on him on hypocrisy.
Right.
But if you look at the ad, there's only one message in the ad, and that is Greg Abbott is crippled. He's in a wheelchair.
Conservatives especially are not happy with it. The right-wing hot air blog hated it even more than Lyndon Johnson's iconic Daisy ad that painted Barry Goldwater as a warmonger. And while it might not come as a surprise that conservatives would take issue with the ad, more liberal publications like Mother Jones have also condemned it as offensive and nasty.
Yeah, so really that type of ad kind of was risky. She may have had a point, but at the same time, it was an ad that didn't play well really to anybody. And so these negative ads do come with their risks, whereas Reagan's It's Morning Again in America ad really, which was all positive, ran very little risk and ended up paying off for him in a big way. Now, the area of propaganda that I'm not really going to focus in on is in commercial ads, because we have a whole chapter for that, and we'll talk about that later in the term.